Alright, all you glorious gamers out there, welcome to the PlayersToo Podcast, the video game podcast for gamers like you, by gamers like you. You can find PlayersToo on all the social media, that's Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, the lot. You can also find our written content over at PlayersToo.com, that's PLAYERSTOO.com. And if you could take 5 seconds to give us 5 stars wherever you get your podcasts, whether that's Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Stitcher, Podchaser, wherever, it all helps us out and it does a huge amount for the exposure of the show. While you're over there, if you could give us a review as well, again, it just helps us out so much. And if you let us know that you've given us a review, we'll shout you out on social media. Alright, and on with the show. My name is Mark Henderson. With me, as always, Mr. Lewis Camley. How's it going, Lewis?
Not too bad, Mark. How you doing?
Yeah, not bad. Working from home.
Yeah.
Working from home now. Work's still fairly miserable, but I get to be in the comfort of my own home because coronavirus has taken over the world.
Did you keep your pajamas on all day? Did you get properly dressed?
I mean, I am currently properly dressed, so I don't know if that's a sly dig at me, which I think there probably is.
No, it wasn't. It honestly wasn't. Shows what you think about what you're wearing.
You absolute arsehole. All right, what have you been playing, Liz?
Well, I've been away again actually this weekend. So before the big lockdown began, I scuttled off to the south for a couple of days, which was really good. But that meant not so much time for gaming as I normally would have. So I'm still playing Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order. I am so close to the end now that I think I've probably got about an hour or two's worth of game left.
Oh yeah,
yeah. I've looked at guides not to see what's ahead, but other than the chapter titles really, and I'm basically
just to get a kind of reference for where you are.
Exactly. Yeah. I won't say anything because at this point again it is so spoilery that I can't really say a word about it. But I am very, very close to the end. I've got every power that Cal can get. I've got every lightsaber upgrade and all that kind of thing. So ready for it to be over. Still really enjoying it. I think I'm getting a bit better at the combat. Everything I've said before still stands. It is a disaster in terms of traversal. Blah 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 blah. blah.
I really didn't think it was as bad as you are making it out to be. Well, I mean, I didn't think it was great. I'm definitely not saying that it was great, but I didn't have as hard a time with it as I think that you're having.
I mean, it's partly that I'm having a hard time with it. I don't know if it's that I'm trying to play it and it's dragged on over the weeks a wee bit just because of the way my time's been recently, and so what might be quite quickly overcome by someone who's, because you played it so quickly, if I remember rightly, like it felt like you completed it in like 3 or 4 day stint or something.
No. I think I was playing it for a couple of weeks.
Whatever. Anyway, I just wonder if me playing it for such a long amount of time has meant that it's felt like a bigger issue than it might do if you just rattle through it. And also your skills in these types of games dip every time you leave it for a couple of days and come back. I think, your timing on the combat and all that kind of thing. So nearly finished with that. I'm really looking forward to getting to the end of that. More importantly, because I was travelling, I took my Switch away and I finally put the hours in to finish Katana Zero, which isn't a long game at all. I just wasn't playing it very often, I really adored this game, as I've said before. I know that you are going to like it.
Yeah, I've got to get around to it, man.
It's stylish, it's so fast-paced. It can be really difficult at times, but there's never those moments where you think, I have no idea what I'm supposed to do or how I'm going to get through this, or this challenge is just too great. It's always just a case of looking at what's ahead, doing that thing that we always talked about with Celeste, of taking a breath, thinking about what you've done, thinking about the mistakes that you've made. There's only 1 or 2 points where I thought the game is at fault here and not me for the kind of way I've tried to get through a level, The story is really good fun, kind of goes a bit skew-whiff towards the end. There's a little bit of me that when it finished I was like, I'm not totally certain I understood what happened here, but yeah, really, really good fun. A bit of a throwaway game in some senses, but intensely enjoyable. So, if you're looking for a lockdown game, it might be a good shout.
The one thing that I do know about Katana Zero is that I have listened to the soundtrack quite a lot, and yet I have never played the game, which shows you that the soundtrack is absolutely amazing. It's that kind of 80s synth wavy stuff that's in it, and it's just great. I just love it. Music without lyrics is quite good for when you're doing monotonous tasks, I find. And I use things like that quite often, and I think that the Katana Zero soundtrack is absolutely superb. Criminally overlooked in Game Awards.
Definitely, yeah.
Criminally overlooked.
As good as it is as well, it really does work in terms of like propelling you through levels. You're not always kind of aware of it, but it's got that beat that just gives you that energy that you need to kind of start again and try again and keep going. It doesn't become overpowering, and it's not a really major feature of the game, but it just adds that wee bit of extra energy that you sometimes need when you're like, oh god, I don't know how I'm supposed to get through this bit, and then it drives you forward. So really, really enjoyed it. Can't wait to hear your thoughts on it as well whenever you get round to it. And finally, I also finally completed Card of Darkness. Which,
the Apple Arcade darling.
Yeah. So I started playing it ages ago. Really, really loved it. I do think by the end it's a little bit unfair in what it's doing to you. One of the final levels I was stuck on for ages, just because no matter how good you are, it can just put a thing in front of you.
That is an unfortunate property of the game.
Definitely. It's ever so slightly too randomized to the point where, I would get through a whole level or a whole floor of one of the levels and be doing really well, or approaching the end of that, and then be hit by an enemy that I'm not capable of defeating in any way, no matter what I do. And
then that's that.
And that's it. And you just have to start again. But glad to get through it, finished it, every level defeated, all cards unlocked, the whole shebang. So I filed it neatly away in my completed games that I've got from my Apple Arcade. So I need to pick a new one.
Do you have a wee folder for completed games?
Yeah, I do, yeah.
That's lovely.
Yeah.
I really like that. That's great. I deleted it almost immediately.
I mean, I suppose I will do that eventually, but just to separate it from the other ones I've downloaded. So I might go back to What the Golf next, or I might try something else. But, yeah.
Superb game, What the Golf. Well, I have been playing, Lewis, Grindstone still,
nice.
Which has been one of the main things that I've been playing this week, because this week has been, I mean, it's been a week. I mean, for the world it's been a week, but it's been a week in general for me as well. So one of the few things that I got to continuously play all week was Grindstone, and I really, really enjoy it, to be honest with you. There's nothing overly exciting about it, in that it's just mindless, good fun, and it's quite a clever little puzzle that they've built into a mobile game. It is weirdly addictive in the way that some mobile games can be weirdly addictive, but because it's on Apple Arcade, there's just nothing to worry about with predatory microtransactions or introducing pay-to-win mechanics or anything like that. That's not a part of it in the slightest. It's just that mold of a mobile game that's there, you know what I mean? It's just a grid and you're matching things together. It's not a match 3, but it's a bit more interesting than that. And I think that what they've done with that game is made a real mobile game and just not put any of the shit in it. To be honest with you, it isn't the most exciting thing in the world, but it's really good fun. It's quite addictive, and it's great to play on the bus, quite frankly.
Well, there's no more of that.
There's no more of that. Working from home all the time. And the only other thing that I've really been playing is Final Fantasy 7, the original Final Fantasy 7. I'm very close to the end again. Yeah, I'm not going to waste anyone's time by describing how my love for a 20-year-old game, but it is truly superb, and I'm very, very, very excited for the remake, because I went back and played it all over again, which was just lovely.
Nice.
But for now, Lewis, time for the news. All right, and news item number 1. E3, Lewis, is officially cancelled due to coronavirus. This actually happened very shortly after we recorded the last podcast, so our last podcast seemed very out of date almost immediately, which was quite annoying to me as I was sitting editing it. However, the ESA have made this statement on their website.
After careful consultation with our member companies regarding the health and safety of everyone in our industry, our fans, our employees, our exhibitors and our long-time E3 partners, we have made the difficult decision to cancel E3 2020, scheduled for June the 9th to the 11th in Los Angeles. Following increased and overwhelming concerns about the COVID-19 virus, we felt that this was the best way to proceed during such an unprecedented global situation. We're very disappointed that we are unable to hold this event for our fans and supporters, but we know it's the right decision based on the information we have today. Our team will be reaching out directly to exhibitors and attendees with information about providing full refunds. We're also exploring options with our members to coordinate an online experience to showcase industry announcements and news in June 2020. Updates will be shared on e3expo.com. We thank everyone who shared their views on reimagining E3 this year. We look forward to bringing you E3 2021 as a reimagined event that brings fans, media and the industry together in a showcase that celebrates the global video game industry.
I mean, it's a sad situation, but it's the right decision.
Yeah,
it's the right decision.
It's the only decision.
They had to do it.
Yeah.
The situation now with coronavirus in Europe and in the US is getting quite serious. I mean, the advice now is to avoid large gatherings, to avoid unnecessary travel, wash your hands all the time, obviously. Please do that, ladies and gentlemen. Stay safe. And also now work from home if you possibly can. Both of me and Lewis have been working from home today, and I think that is basically our plan to continue that going forward. Obviously, we're in fortunate positions where we are able to do that, and I understand that many people are not in as fortunate a situation. But for the ESA, in terms of having a large gathering like that just now, particularly in California, where the coronavirus is particularly bad in America, I mean, it would have been absolutely crazy to continue any sort of facade that this was going to go ahead. So I think that's the right decision at the end of the day.
Yeah, as you say, it's the only decision that could have been made. It would have been forced on them eventually, I'm sure, by state legislature anyway. So it's the right thing, the only thing. It's terrible shame for everyone who would have been going.
It's awful. I feel really sorry for the smaller devs and whatever who really use this as a time to have big meetings with big publishers and who use it as a time of networking, and a lot of good things can come out of conferences like this for smaller devs. Unfortunately, that's been taken away from them this year, but it, again, is a completely necessary decision at this point. I mean, we here at PlayersToo are also taking precautions, aren't we, Lewis?
I think so, yeah.
We have just spent an hour or so trying to set Lewis up with a recording station.
Yeah.
at home should one of us become ill. Hopefully it will not come to that and we will continue to record as normal. But even if we don't, we should be able to still continue doing these podcasts, which
so you'll never be free of us.
You'll never be free of us. We'll always be in your ear holes. Yeah, just final words. Keep safe, wash your fucking hands, and don't stockpile food in the toilet roll. That's all I've got to say.
Not beyond reason, certainly, yeah.
Not beyond reason. Not beyond reason.
And also stay positive and remember that this isn't going to be forever. This will pass and we will get back to normal and video games will help us get there.
Alright, news item number 2. Naughty Dog, Lewis, makers of The Last of Us Part 2, Uncharted and many other good things, have come under heavy criticism this week for their culture of crunch. This all basically stems from an article by Jason Schreier over at Kotaku. Of course it's Jason Schreier. Who else would it have been when it comes to crunch? I say that quite flippantly. He does very good work, and the article is a tremendous read, actually, a very good read, and we'll post links to his article over in the show notes at PlayersToo.com. The article goes into how crunch is caused at Naughty Dog, the effects that it has on the staff, the ludicrous amount of hours that some of the staff have been asked to work, the fact that Naughty Dog are actually struggling to hang on to good experienced staff, and in fact 60% of non-lead designers have left the company since Uncharted 4 came out, which is a staggeringly high amount. And one of the weirdest things about the article was my discovery that Naughty Dog don't have a production team.
Yeah.
That is absolutely insane. I cannot fathom how they've gone this long without a production team. For those of you that don't know, like, the production team is basically responsible for getting shit done. And but that sounds a bit flippant, right? But they're responsible for the coordination of many tasks.
Yep.
And making sure that the right people are doing the right things at the right time. Do you know what I mean? And without that step, yes, you may have a more creative field, which is what Naughty Dog is trying to do, but as one of the people in the article said, yeah, it's like one of the most creative places he's ever worked, but you can't go home.
Yeah.
That's no use. When creativity runs wild, that's great, but at the end of the day, you need to deliver a product, and at a certain point, a line has to be drawn, and if you have a great idea beyond that line, unless it's groundbreaking, that has to be saved for the next game, you know?
Definitely,
it can't just keep going and going and going and going and going and going and going. That, to me, absolutely blew my mind. I could not believe that when they said that there wasn't a production team.
They use this line that the philosophy of the studio is that everyone should act as their own producer, which is a very lovely idea, but is completely absurd in practice, because
that is an absolutely meaningless statement.
Yeah, because
it doesn't mean anything. You can't be your own production
all
team.
it does is put the pressure on individuals to get things done, to be creative, to be innovative, but it must lead to breakdowns of communication. It must lead to things like, it's mentioned within the article that things would happen, people would come into work, they would expect to have this amount to do, and of course then you start getting emails saying this thing needs to get done. Some people weren't actually getting to the game build that they were supposed to be working on until 6 o'clock at night, so you've still got a whole shift in front of you, and that's because, like you say, there's no one overseeing any of this, saying this is the bit that needs to happen right now and it needs to stop at this point, you know?
Another thing that was said is that decisions might have been made at a high level that meant, say, a part of the game was scrapped or changed, and someone was currently working on that part of the game and would continue to work on that part of the game all week before they were told that was nonsense. So that's just someone's wasted week.
Yeah. That they've probably spent, 14 hours a day on as well. It's not just like a normal working week.
It's not just like a normal working week, exactly. On top of this, a former Naughty Dog employee called Jonathan Cooper wrote this amazing series of tweets about his time at Naughty Dog.
When I left Naughty Dog late last year, they threatened to withhold my final paycheck until I signed additional paperwork stating I wouldn't share their production practices. They finally relented when I assured them that this was most likely illegal. The truth is, I have no awful crunch tale. The story animators, as we were known, were averaging 46 hours a week when I left, and I personally never went over 55. The story team is super organised, and we reacted to whatever was thrown at us. That's not to say others weren't suffering. For the demo shown last September, the gameplay animators crunched more than I've ever seen and required weeks of recovery afterwards. One good friend of mine was hospitalised at that time due to overwork. He still had over half a year to go. There have been others since. The reason I left is because I only want to work with the best. That is no longer Naughty Dog. Their reputation for crunch within LA is so bad it was near impossible to hire seasoned contract game animators to close out the project. As such, we loaded up on film animators. While super talented, they lacked the technical design know-how to assemble scenes. Similarly, the design team ballooned with juniors to make up for the attrition of key roles. Every aspect of finishing this game took much longer due to the lack of game experience on the team. Don't get me wrong, these kids are mostly awesome and the best were great. It's just when the junior to senior ratio is out of balance, things can really grind and more time is spent training than actually working. LA teams make sure and pick them up when all the contracts end. Contract work is a huge part of the LA ecosystem to ship large games. Unlike game design, there is a thriving animation industry here, and seasoned animators can often choose their projects. Most of the contract story animators quit last year. Those that don't can be at Naughty Dog for 2 to 3 projects with pauses in between, and while paid overtime, never receive benefits or the security of a full-time gig. This is the way the industry is moving, so workers need more protection rather than the carrot of a full-time job, in quotes, one day. There are Naughty Dog stories worse than this, but like everything on my Twitter, I'm focusing on animation. For The Last of Us 2 fans, the game should turn out great with industry-leading animation. I would just not recommend anyone work at Naughty Dog until they prioritise talent retention. Ultimately, Naughty Dog's linear games have a formula and they focus test the shit out of them. While talented, their success is due in large part to Sony's deep pockets funding delays rather than skill alone. A more senior team would have shipped The Last of Us 2 a year ago.
I mean, quite a harrowing story there, really,
Definitely,
isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah.
The fact that Naughty Dog, someone that we think of as an absolute premier game-making studio, top of the game, cannot get any better than that, can't find staff, can't get good animators to apply to their jobs because of the culture they've created, and as such are expecting junior or inexperienced members of staff to come in and take those roles and work those ridiculous hours, which then in turn means that other people have to wait and have to train these people, none of which is getting their work done, which just perpetuates the whole horrible system. Now, there's a lot of counter-arguments to this that I think are quite silly, really, when you actually sit down and think about them. One of the main ones is that everyone goes through periods of crunch. Like, everyone's job has crunch in it. What the fuck is the problem? But it is very rarely, very, very rarely, for as long a period as happens in video game crunch. It is also very, very rarely, and in fact, I don't know any situations where it is institutionalised as video games were. It's just fucking expected. Like, you just, on the run up to the game, the 6 months running up to the game, you are here as much as you physically can be without ending up in the hospital. And even that said,
or not,
some people have ended up in the hospital, and maybe we'll pay you overtime if we're quite a good studio. And as well, it's just so widespread as well. Like, this is not unique to Naughty Dog at all.
Oh, no, nowhere near unique to them.
Not unique to Naughty Dog. But this attitude of, oh, well, everyone crunches, like I've crunched before. Let Mark tell you a little story, right? Very recently, Mark was sent to an office away from his own, and the purpose of this was for me to help get something finished and out the door. And I was staying in a hotel. I woke up that morning, went into the office for about 8:30, and I then never left that office until 1:10 in the morning. It was an excruciating day. I then got back to my hotel at about 1:30, and then between the hours of 1:30 and 3:30, I edited this podcast. So your pal Mark knows about crunch.
Don't tell them that, they'll boycott us.
No, it's fine. It's fine, because I think there's a difference between crunch that you choose and crunch that you are put in a situation whereby you can't leave, which the first part of that kind of was, but it was fine because for me, that was kind of what I was there to do.
Yeah.
And it was a one-off, basically, and it was something I didn't mind, and I was fairly compensated for my time for the extra work that I did. So it was all good. If that were weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks into months of that, I couldn't handle that. I don't know how anyone could handle that. I think people that think like that, it's a very narrow-minded approach that they're taking, that it's just like, well, other people do this, so what's the fucking problem with you doing it? The other argument is that, oh, well, some people have to do that amount of hours to make ends meet. I think that again, is a very serious problem. Like, obviously that is a very serious problem. But the fact that some people have to do those crazy, crazy hours to make ends meet is awful, but it's sort of a different problem. It's a more socio-economic problem, whereas this is a work culture corporate issue whereby you create an atmosphere whereby people don't feel it is acceptable to leave at the appropriate time. Do you know what I mean? I'm not saying that is a worse issue than someone having to work 70 hours a week just to put fucking food on the table. And if you are in a situation like that, or if you know anyone that's in a situation like that, for God's sake, get help. But it doesn't diminish the fact that this is a problem. Just because that is a problem doesn't mean that this isn't a problem.
Well, exactly.
You know?
I mean, I totally agree with that. The fact that where it becomes cultural is actually where it's, you know, a much tougher problem to deal with, because like you say, anyone who's having to work crazy hours just to make ends meet, that's because of low wage economies. Essentially, these people are high level animators working in Los Angeles or wherever around America, and so they're not,
around the world.
Well, around the world, yeah, that's true. Around the world, but like whatever they're being paid should be enough for them to get by. It's the fact
what they're being paid is enough to get them by. They don't need to be there.
They don't
from
have
a monetary standpoint.
It's only about delivering this game, and it's only about the pressure that they each put on one another and that the company puts on them. So again, there's quotes within this article about people saying, well, if I left at the normal time or even a wee bit earlier, I would come in the next day and I would get a look from this animator who was like, you ruined my night last night because you weren't here at 11 o'clock to get this thing finished, and that stopped me getting this thing finished. Again, coming back to the production team thing, because there's no people in place here keeping these channels moving and keeping people moving at the same pace and getting pieces of work from this desk to this desk to this desk at the right points. That's what a whole production process is, and to have never had it, as Naughty Dog seem to, that's the model that they're following. It just leads to these situations where you are sat at your desk thinking like, good Lord, I would like to go home. I would like to sleep and see my family. I would like to eat properly. And yet there are reports there of them not even taking the free dinners that Naughty Dog put on while they're crunching because they're so busy and so stressed out about getting the things done. So none of this is good. None of it is very easily solvable, I don't imagine.
It's a very complex problem. It's a very, very complex problem, particularly when you get to the scale of someone like Naughty Dog. It can take a long time to implement change, but really I think something drastically has to happen at studios like this.
Yeah.
Just to kind of keep on going with these sort of counter arguments that I keep seeing everywhere. Another one is, well, they don't have to work there. Like, if they can't handle it, just leave. And the response to that is, they are. They are just leaving. They cannot keep talent. The video games industry cannot keep talent because of situations like this. And that leads to worse crunch, as we were just talking about, because you're expecting junior or more inexperienced members of staff to do the work of experienced members of staff. And that just isn't realistic. No. People can't do that. And then you're wasting time quotes, training them rather than doing your work, which is just feeding into this horrible, horrible cycle. And it also means that you're not getting as good a game because the talent, the people that could have moved up in the industry and been real figureheads and been real game changers have moved on to other things, have moved on to film animation, or if you're a programmer, you've moved on to some startup. You're probably doing exactly the same fucking work for more money and less hours.
Yeah,
do you know what
exactly,
I mean? Who's not taking that deal? It's ridiculous to suggest that it's because these people can't handle it. It's because they're in an incredibly hostile environment that is completely juxtaposed to how people generally want to live their lives.
Well, exactly. They just shouldn't have to handle it. Whether they can handle it or not is completely irrelevant in my mind.
I could not agree more.
One of the things that Naughty Dog have said is like, that we hire these types of people. We look for go-getters and hard workers and blah, blah, blah. So they are creating a team which buys into the idea of that culture, but they all burn out eventually, and it's just not a sustainable way to move forward. And like you say, now with stories like this coming out, less and less people are going to want to work for Naughty Dog in the future. So how could they possibly guarantee the kind of level of games that they usually put out in the future,
Well, that is another thing. Like, talking about the level of the games, the kind of main last argument that I often see is like, well, this is just what it takes. Yeah. If you want to put out a game as good as Naughty Dog puts out, then this is what it takes. This is the sacrifices that have to be made. One, I simply don't fucking believe that. And I'm going to quote someone else who works for Ubisoft this time, who is a program team lead by the name of Gavin Young, who said, I haven't crunched since Assassin's Creed 3. And I've shipped 3 AAA games in that time. Believing crunch is a necessary part of making good games is delusional thinking. Mm-hmm. I really commend him for coming out and saying that, because some of the flack that he's got back from this is just bullshit. So, it's all like, Ubisoft doesn't make as good games.
Yeah, he crunched on Assassin's Creed 3 and that was not worth it.
Yeah. But the point stands is that they are massive AAA games that they're putting out. And I understand what people are getting at. Ubisoft is much more formulaic than Naughty Dog. But fucking hell, let's learn from one another here. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. There's got to be some middle ground. And if this is what's required to create a game like The Last of Us, then I'd fucking rather not have it. Fucking hell, like, people's livelihoods, people's lives are more important than a piece of entertainment for us. No matter what it is, no matter how good it is, them sacrificing a huge amount of their life and living in misery for months is not worth it. It's not worth it. And particularly fucking nowadays, Christ, like, we should be thinking about putting people's healths ahead of trivial things like whether or not we're going to get the best video game ever where Ellie's hair moves in the most perfect and beautiful way and everything's absolutely as dynamic as possible, when 300 people have absolutely broken their backs to do it. We can't move forward thinking that that's an okay way to proceed. It's just a shame as well that it's happened to such a good game, because what is the response now? What do we do? Do we not buy the game? Is all these people's work in vain now because nobody goes and buys the game? I know that there was a line in Jason Schreier's article about the fact that people were wishing that it would be a commercial flop so that Naughty Dog would have to move and have to change. That's not going to happen. This game's going to be fucking incredible. Yeah. It's going to be an absolute fucking masterpiece, and it's going to have come on the tiers of millions. Do you know what I mean? A bit of an exaggeration.
Yeah,
of course,
but you're totally right. Like, it's, at the end of the day, we all have to consider how much of this we're willing to put up with long term. It's happening in most of the major franchises, most of the major studios, in fairly bad ways, not always equally, but we are responsible for that. It is our dollar that is affecting that happening. So, we are complicit, and we have to think about it and take responsibility. And that doesn't mean that everyone should go out and boycott this game or whatever. You have to think carefully about your own consumption choices, but be aware of it, think about it, talk to other gamers about it, so that over time that things might start to change,
All right, and news item number 3, something a bit more cheerier, Lewis, something a bit more cheery. The rumour mill has went absolutely wild in the last week, because there has been a lot of speculation that Sony is trying to bring back the Silent Hill series on PS5 and revive Silent Hills, which was the Hideo Kojima game, which was infamously canned.
And which you infamously said would never happen when I said there was a chance it was coming.
We're coming back to that. So this all basically stemmed from an article on relyonhorror.com, which is a website I've never heard of before, and I cannot vouch for how reliable this information is. With all the will in the world, it doesn't look like the most grand of publications, we will say. However, they claim to have sources, and these sources have said that Masahiro Ito is in fact working on a Silent Hill game, and this will be a soft reboot of the series, and that is kind of known, like we sort of knew that. However, the article also claims that the original director, Kichiro Toyama, and the original composer, Akira Yamaoka, are involved, which I don't think that we knew before this. Also, that the game will be delivered either in full or in part by Sony's Japan studio, which will almost definitely make it a PS5 exclusive, which we definitely did not know before this. Beyond that, on the revival of Silent Hills, the article seemed to be indicating that this could either be an episodic or anthological release, sort of similar to a Telltale game or a Supermassive game, which is also not the first time that we've heard that. Apparently, Sony is also, quotes, working hard to mend the relationship between Kojima and Konami, presumably to get the game to go ahead in the first place. Kojima himself has also indicated a lot that he is working on a horror game, had mentioned PT just after Death Stranding had come out, and there's been a lot of kind of swirlings around him and a horror game, and maybe, quotes, smaller projects as well was another thing. And the only other point of interest, I suppose, of the article was that either one or both of these games, it was a bit unclear, could utilise a new version of the PSVR headset, which I think is the first time that we've really heard that being spoken about as well. So, as Lewis pointed out, a while back, this was all brought up, and I never thought in a million fucking years that this would happen. I still remain unconvinced about this, to be completely honest with you. If this were someone like Eurogamer saying this, or Kotaku, or IGN, we might be having a different conversation. Now, that's not to say that this isn't true, it's just that I don't know anything about the people that are publishing this.
No.
Do you know what I mean? And I suppose my first question to you is, how reliable do you think that this is?
I mean, I don't know. I'm looking at a Games Radar article, which I'll also include in the show notes.
Can I just say, I was looking at a Push Square article as well. Like, the industry went for this.
Yeah.
It wasn't as if this was shot down immediately. The industry went for this.
And this article mentions that they both Rely on Horror and a Twitter user called Aesthetic Gamer, who have both kind of been talking about this, have proven track records with these kinds of things. So who knows? I mean, I always take gaming rumours with a huge pinch of salt, and I'm reluctant to say this because this
really has to be taken with like a boulder-sized pinch of salt.
A huge bit of salt, but also, and I might end up regretting saying this, but it feels a bit like no smoke without fire. Like, there is so much smoke here from all the different elements of this that makes me think surely something is coming.
Well, I completely agree with that. I think that there is no smoke without fire. If you were to ask me, do you think that there'll be a Silent Hill game next generation? Yes, I do.
Well, Konami have basically said as much. Yeah,
Konami have basically said as much. Do I think Masahiro Ito is going to be directing that game or heavily involved in that game? Yes, I do, because that's come out before. Is it going to be a PS5 exclusive, and is it going to be funded by PlayStation, and is it going to be supported by Japan Studio? That is a different level entirely, which I
could see all of those things. I don't know why you'd be so sceptical about that.
It's not that I couldn't see it happening. It's just that That's a bit more of a leap.
Yeah.
You know? And then to go from that to Kojima will retake up Silent Hills and will produce a Silent Hills game. That, again, for me, is a leap again on top of that, because that relationship was destroyed when he left.
Absolutely was destroyed, and it's hard to imagine that being repaired. But I like this idea of Sony standing in between those, both Kojima and Konami, and mediating that. There's a lot of other rumours circulating just now, I suspect a lot less trustworthy, that Sony are looking to leverage Metal Gear, Castlevania and Silent Hill from Konami in some sort of probably like license deal. So
that is true that was swirling, but that came from 4chan.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's what I mean. So it's much less likely to be.
Much less likely to be true. And in fact, this article does say that Sony were not looking to purchase Silent Hill. They were looking to publish it with Konami.
I can see that part. That's the thing. I mean, forget Metal Gear and Castlevania for a moment, because that feels like a massive step forward. But I can totally believe a Sony looking at the landscape just now, looking at the moves that Xbox have made in the last year or two in terms of buying up studios, that they would look at the properties that Konami had and the likelihood that Konami are not going to do very much with them anymore, because they basically aren't making traditional games very often anymore at all, and say, well, we've got teams that can take these IPs on and do well with them. All we need from you is the agreement to do so. You'll get a cut of the cash. I don't really see who loses out there. You know, Konami are going to get their bit of gold from it all. Yeah, and Sony get to say that they have got PT finally coming to PlayStation 5. You know, I think that is exactly what's going to be driving Sony forward with this. There's obviously the Japan connection. I don't know, there just feels like there's a lot in it to me. If they can announce PlayStation 5 is coming with a Kojima-led Silent Hill project, that will be incredible. And particularly if all of these things end up being exclusive. I mean, Silent Hill it's not a franchise that I'm particularly involved in over the years, but it is a massive, massive franchise for video games.
Oh, yeah.
So, you know, it's the kind of thing that will help shift systems, and that's exactly what Sony are looking for. So I really don't think it's as unlikely. I'm still on the more unlikely than likely camp, probably, but I would not be stunned if this happened now.
Fair enough, man. Fair enough. I'm still going to take some convincing. I'm not going to lie to you. All right, news item number 4. It has been confirmed by Bethesda themselves that Doom Eternal will not run at 4K 60 frames per second on Stadia. There is no good headlines for Stadia. There will never be one. They are all negative all the time. So back at GDC, id director Matty Stratton said that Doom would be capable of running true 4K resolution with HDR colour at an unrelenting 60 frames per second. However, that is categorically not true now, and the specs have come out from Bethesda that says Doom Eternal on Stadia will run at 1080p 60 frames per second on HD displays, and upscaled to 2160p from 1800p 60 frames per second on 4K displays. So basically, on 4K displays, it's going to be up-resed from 1800p to 2160p, and that is not true 4K. There's no way to
no way to spin that.
There was an interesting VentureBeat article, links to the articles that we use as always over on the show notes at PlayersToo.com, that references just how much hardware a gamer would need to run Doom Eternal on its top settings, which is hilariously called Ultra Nightmare mode, or Ultra Nightmare settings, which is the most high fidelity settings that the game is capable of. And it is literally thousands of dollars worth of equipment. So one of two things has happened here, basically, is that either id haven't lived up to their end of the deal and haven't been able to make Doom Eternal run at true 4K on Google Stadia's infrastructure, or Google Stadia was not ever capable of doing this in the first place, and it doesn't in fact have the power. Teraflops aplenty, it is not actually physically capable of doing this. Running games at true 4K has been a promise of Google Stadia since day one. I am not aware of a single game of all their 29 now, is it?
All 29.
All 20. I don't know how much it is now, to be completely honest with you. The low 30s, we'll say. Not a single one of them has been able to run at true 4K. Not a single one.
This as well, Doom was a huge part of the Stadia launch strategy.
Massive.
We've talked about it before, how Doom Eternal was obviously supposed to be the game that kind of really birthed the system at the tail end of last year before it got
let's
delayed.
Prove everyone can do it. What game can we do that with? It was Doom Eternal.
Yep.
That'll push the system so hard, and if it can do it with Doom, it can do it with anything, and it can't do it with Doom.
Exactly. It cannot do it. They haven't delivered on another promise. Like you say, that could be at least in part down to id. It could be entirely down to to Google and Stadia. Either way, it is not a good look that it is yet another unfulfilled promise, and again, a fairly major one for Stadia, because they felt to me really like they were hanging quite a lot of their hat on Doom Eternal back in the day before it got delayed. You know, Doom Eternal was a big flagship thing for them, and they've botched it. So somewhere along the line it has been botched, maybe that's a fairer thing to say, and they haven't been able to deliver that. So, you know, the game will still be there. It's another major game for Stadia to have, and that's good for anyone who is still remarkably using that service, but not in the way that they told us was definitely possible, and a very big part of selling that system to people. So not good again. How often are we going to sit here and do that?
Not much longer, because I think it's going to fade into irrelevancy soon, to be completely honest. All right, finishing off as we always do with a couple of shout outs. And speaking of Doom Eternal, Luce, the reviews are in. Currently sitting at an 87 on the PS4 and a 90 on Xbox and PC. Do not be a slave to that Metacritic though. But quite frankly, it seems more like Doom 2016, which is no bad thing. But however, it is down to, like, the heads-up display looks exactly the same. I've seen enemies that I recognise from the previous game. But the 3D traversal, this sort of platforming element that they've brought into it with these forward dashes and the double jumps and whatever that you had in the previous games, looks absolutely incredible. Every time I see it, I'm just thinking, God, that looks really, really good. And it's so difficult to do first-person platforming. I mean, it can go so badly wrong. I mean, it remains to be seen. It remains to be seen how that's actually going to play. But by all accounts, just now, really, really good.
Good stuff. Yep.
Shout out number 2, Animal Crossing as well, coming out on the very same day as Doom Eternal. The reviews are also in, currently sitting at an astonishingly high 91 on Metacritic, which is a high for the whole series, in fact. This is apparently the best Animal Crossing game, and to be honest with you, all the reviews back this up. If you like Animal Crossing, this is apparently the best one. I, once again, completely do not understand what the appeal of this game is. Lewis, I know that you're on the same camp, basically.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
But if you do like Animal Crossing, they've knocked it out of the park in this one, and you're going to love it, so I wouldn't hold back in buying it.
Absolutely not. It does seem like players of that game, of that franchise so far, are absolutely falling over themselves to say how good this has been. So yeah, it's also, for this current moment, it's probably the right game for a lot of people. So yeah, if you're an Animal Crossing fan, it's fun. It's a big moment.
Not too serious. Alright, shout out number 3, the other game, I suppose, that came out recently was Nioh 2. And the reviews are also in for that. And in fact, that's been released now, isn't it?
Yeah, it came out on the 13th, a few days ago, yeah.
So that's currently sitting at an 86 on Metacritic. It seems as though it's definitely an improvement on Nioh, the first game. It's given players a lot more options from what I can gather, a lot more weapon choices, a lot more ways to tackle the more difficult parts of the game. Of course, this game is in the Soulsborne category and is apparently excruciatingly difficult, incredibly, masochistically difficult, even by the standards of the Dark Souls games.
Exactly,
this is a seriously difficult one. But however, if you're someone who's into that kind of game, this is probably right up your street, because by all accounts it's pretty damn good.
It looks brilliant. I always really wanted to check out Nioh, the first Nioh game, and I thought a lot about playing this one as well, but I did read that it is excruciatingly difficult, and I'm not sure that that's where I am right now. I have just seen that, though, that it made it to the top of the UK charts ahead of FIFA and Modern Warfare, so there's obviously an audience out there
it's
for
the
it.
First big new game of the year, really.
I just didn't think it had that big a following, though. So it's moving units, which is really good for a game like that to be getting some traction. So good stuff, yeah.
All right, shout out number 4. Resident Evil 3 Remake demo has a release date, and it is the 19th of March. Odd to talk about a release date for a demo, isn't it? Unlike the RE2 remake demo, you'll be able to play this as many times as you like, and there'll be no time limit on it. If you don't know, the Resident Evil 2 remake demo was like a one-shot demo, and you had half an hour to play through it, and that was that. It was also announced in the same tweet that an open beta for Resident Evil Resistance, which is effectively RE3 Remake's online component, will also begin in March the 27th as well, for anyone that wants to be involved in that. Alright, shout out number 5. As of the 13th of March, Dreams is launched a, quotes, small beta evaluation trial to use content created in Dreams outside of Dreams for business use. This would be it functioning much more like an actual game engine. And I don't know, I just think that's really cool. I just think that's really great what that game's doing, and I really hope that they are able to succeed in what they're doing. and people are able to use it as a proper game engine, or are able to use those assets that they built maybe in something more substantial to create a real proper commercial product. Yeah, I just think what the Media Molecule's doing with Dreams is just really, really interesting, really, really cool, and I hope it succeeds. It has to come to PC, but I really hope it succeeds.
Yeah, absolutely, it does have to come to PC. But yeah, just like they're saying that you can use it for your own artwork, your music portfolio, to design a t-shirt. I'm reading straight from the Dreams blog here. Like, this is beyond even just gaming applications. This is like, basically they seem to be asking the community, what would you want to use this for? In what ways would you want to use this? Help us find that out, and let's work out how we're going to do this all together. And I just think, yeah, they could have so easily put the gates up around this and been like, this is our thing, this is how you're going to create content, and this is where it's supposed to live. And they're not doing that. And the more that teams can do this kind of thing, the better. It's so good for gamers' creativity, for other people to get into the gaming ecosphere by doing these things. It's just, yeah, it's brilliant stuff.
Alright, and shout out number 6, ending on a happy note, Lewis. Ending on a happy note. It has been announced that the games industry has raised over $4.5 million for emergency services and charities in the aid of the Australian bushfire crisis, which is just awesome. Like, and I think in the current situation that we are all in, it's just nice to remember that we can all come together and do something fucking good and something fucking positive. Do you know what I mean? And not be at one another's throats, not be stock buying fucking toilet paper, not trying to dick over each other at every given opportunity. We can actually come together, and this industry can actually be something of great good in the world, and this is just a fantastic example of it.
Hear, hear.
Alright, and with that, Lewis, time for a beer, and then we will be back with Topic of the Week. And we are back with Topic of the Week. Topic of the Week this week is Nintendo's Indies World, which happened earlier today, which is the 17th of March. And we're just going to take you through all the games that Nintendo decided were worthy of being in their showcase. First up was Blue Fire by Graffiti Games. Now, this immediately, kicking off in a hot one, talking about Blue Fire, nailed it.
Yeah, nailed it.
Anyway, I thought this looked really good. Actually, it was a 3D platformer, and it's very difficult for me to be excited about 3D platformers in general. But this had like a huge amount of very fluid motion, dashing, wall running. The art style and the combat looked a bit like Breath of the Wild, to be honest with you. But it seemed to be much more about dodging than it was about attacking. The wee guy even looked a bit like Dark Link, to be honest with you. Yeah. So I think that they're obviously going for that sort of art style. Coming in the summer of 2020, I thought that looked really cool.
Yeah, it's one of the best things that they showed off in this showcase. I think, coming later this year in the summer, timed exclusive for Nintendo. It just, like you said, it feels like it will play a little bit like an indie Zelda game would. As you pointed out in particular, there's moments in the trailer where...
It's not like Breath of the Wild, though. It's not open world. It's level based. It looks very much as if it's level based.
Very much level based. And yeah, it just got quite interesting looking like 3D environments, but it had really interesting like sections of like wall running and platforming and stuff in it. It looks pretty tight. Like for,
it does look tight.
For an indie
really
game,
tight.
it looks like
definitely
very well polished. Definitely. So yeah, one to look forward to, definitely. And so the next game then was Baldo, I think is how we're saying it, from Nap's team, and that is an Italian team. This was like an action adventure sort of stroke JRPG, but coming from a European team, quite unusual.
It's an odd mashup.
It definitely is, yeah. I thought the art style for this like really reminded me of Studio Ghibli. It's not something that I would be even remotely interested in playing, but definitely for you JRPG fans, something to look forward to maybe. And that is also a timed exclusive coming in the summer. Yeah,
it looked a bit kind of Link's Awakening dungeon crawlery. The next one after that was I Am Dead, which is an Annapurna published game by Holopond and Richard Hogg. It seems to be a kind of puzzle-based game where you are a dead person from this town on this tiny island in the North Sea, apparently. And you play as this guy's ghost, and part of what you're trying to do is ghost through objects to find what is inside, whether that be buildings or someone's bag, to then tell the secret story of this little town. I don't know, like I find that everything Annapurna does is just very charming and quite innovative and quite creative ideas, and I just like to see them explored. That's part of the reason why I love indie games so much, and I just think that this is a nice concept that they're kind of showing off here. It's an interesting idea. Whether it comes to fruition, whether it is actually a very good game at all, remains to be seen. But it's interesting nonetheless.
Definitely agree with that. Yeah, it looks like it has like an interesting story running through it. Some fairly innovative kind of puzzle design stuff. Nothing that we haven't seen before, but like done pretty well by the looks of things. It kind of reminded me of Assemble with Care, which is the game. It's an Apple Arcade game that I played from that game company. Just the way that you would like ghost into, I think it was like a walkie-talkie or something it showed at one point. Like that was exactly the kind of stuff you're doing in Assemble with Care. So yeah, it looks pretty nice altogether.
Interesting fun fact as well. I googled Richard Hogg because I didn't know who that was. I think I found his personal website, and in his about page, one of the facts about him is that he's in a band called Satan's Cock.
There you go. Not in keeping with the tone of this trailer whatsoever.
Absolutely not, but it's very funny.
And that's another 2020 timed exclusive for Nintendo. And so the next game up was a really interesting 2D side-scrolling shooter game called Bark.
This looked superb. I was fully on board from this from the get-go. You play as 4 distinct animals, apparently, despite the fact that it's called Bark, which implies to me certainly that it would be all dogs. But it reminds me of a game that we played a lot called Tsushima, which was a 2D side-scrolling bullet hell game. And it was just so much fun, and it was so much fun to play couch co-op, and this is also a couch co-op game, and that really, really stood out to me. They were saying that it was aimed at families, but there was like a competitive element to it, and it did look not easy, we will say. And apparently the different characters all have quite distinct play styles as well. It really stood out to me. I thought it looked really interesting.
Absolutely, yeah. That family focus thing is interesting. Yeah, they said it would be cooperative while also competitive. So I hope that there's enough in there for gamers who aren't playing with kids or whatever. But given how punishing Tsushima was, something a wee bit easier than that would still also be fun. So that's coming from TikTok Games, and that's late 2020 timed exclusive.
Also, Tsushima, check that out, guys.
Yeah,
really good.
Definitely check that out, yeah.
Great couch co-op. Next up was a Cyanide and Happiness game, which is a publication I completely forgot existed, called Freakpocalypse. Is that correct, Lewis?
That is correct. Although everyone is going to call it Freakopolypse.
Yes, because that is an obviously better title.
Yeah.
This by Explosum Games. To be honest with you, this was weird from the absolute get-go. The guy from Cyanide and Happiness called Chris Williams was there and was doing a kind of back and forth with a wee animated character. The game itself looked like an adventure game. It's coming in 2020. It's another timed console exclusive for the Switch. It was doing nothing for me, I've got to say. No. It was doing nothing for me.
So next up was Summer in Mara. This coming from, I think we're going to say Chibig Games, that hailing out of Spain. Essentially, this is a sort of farm simulator, like a busy work game, as you would describe it, I think, Mark.
Yeah. Well, I've got Animal Crossing meets Stardew Valley.
Very much, yeah, exactly that. I thought, like, style-wise, it looked a wee bit like the kind of modern Pokemon games as well.
Yeah, totally agree. Yeah, totally agree.
So if that's your kind of thing, as we've already said on this episode, it's not really our thing, so I don't imagine either of us are going to play it. But it's kind of a farming game, but set in islands in the ocean, which, you know, is a little bit similar to something else that's coming out this week.
Exploration.
Yeah,
underwater
that's true,
exploration as well.
Absolutely, yeah.
Next up was Quantum League, which was by Nimble Giant Entertainment. This is an online multiplayer FPS. A weird concept, which is that there's a time paradox and you can play as different versions of yourself all at once, it seemed. Am I getting that right?
I think so,
I
yeah.
got the wrong end of the stick here. Because in concept, I think that is an incredibly interesting idea and I would love to see that explored. However, in practice, I have no idea how the hell that's going to work. I would encourage anyone to go and look at the trailer for this, particularly if you're into FPSs or online multiplayers in general, because I thought it looked very interesting as a concept. It's coming out in late 2020. FPSs, online multiplayer, generally not your thing, but what do you think?
No, I thought it looked really interesting as well. Like, definitely you're right that those aren't my things, but this was like 1v1 and 2v2 they talked about, so it's, you know, it's not like Call of Duty, which really stresses me out. It's going to be like small battles, but the really interesting thing with this was this idea of, well, they said that you can rewind to change the outcome. It looked to me basically like what a lot of gamers would recognise as ghost mode, where you would start a fight and maybe on your first run you run forward to get an upgrade, say, and then on your second run you run forward and you shoot the guy, and on your third run you run and get this thing or get to this location. And as each replay happens, all of those things are happening concurrently, so you're sort of filling in your battle almost.
Yeah, and you could be shooting someone from a different timeline almost. Yeah. This is very difficult to explain in an audio medium. I would highly encourage anyone to go and watch the trailer though.
But definitely does look really cool, and that's coming late 2020. Next up was The Good Life.
Good lord. What happened with this one?
Oh, they referred to the game as a debt repayment RPG, which immediately turned me off big time. This is from Swery and White Owls, I believe. Very odd looking game. They're describing it as unique and bizarre, and it does. I mean, it's hard to argue with that. Yeah. So you seem to be trying to solve some sort of murder mystery in what looks like a kind of traditional English setting, a 3D kind of action adventure looking game, but not only do you play as a human, you can also play as a cat and a dog. And
No. You change into a cat and a dog.
Yeah, exactly. You transform in between those in order to get different skills.
And not only are you trying to repay debts, you're also trying to solve a murder. And not only that, your main mode of transportation is to ride a sheep.
Superb. Bizarre.
That's a game that exists. Coming 2020, guys.
Check it out. Yeah, go and take a look at that trailer.
Next up was The Last Campfire by Hello Games Loose.
The Last Campfire, yeah. We've been waiting quite a wee while to see some more of this. It was announced at, was it E3 2018, is that right?
It was the Game Awards 2018.
Is that right? Game Awards. So, yeah, this is coming from the same studio who made No Man's Sky, obviously, but a much smaller production altogether.
Much smaller scope, much tighter experience, absolutely.
So this showed us a bit of gameplay at last. It's a platformer, kind of puzzle platformer. Looks gorgeous, like it looks as interesting as that original trailer made it feel.
Journey vibes, man.
Total Journey vibes, yeah. You're nailed on indie game. It feels like exactly the kind of side project that a studio like Hello Games could do really well. It's coming out in the summer. I thought it looked gorgeous. I think it will play exactly as we imagine it will play. It'll be a fairly straightforward kind of puzzle platform game, but really, really good to see something interesting coming out in that space from, Hello Games, who've pushed themselves into being a major studio through No Man's Sky,
Yeah, certainly in the indie space. A game about compassion, empathy, and finding hope. Something that we could use a little bit of, I think. Something we could use a little bit of.
So next up was Pixel Junk Eden 2.
You're getting all the easy ones to describe, Liz.
I literally cannot describe this. The only note I took for this game was no idea about this. You said it looked like...
It looked like the game Flow, and that is where my knowledge of this game begins and ends.
Yeah, it seemed to have some sort of some issue with...
There was a music
and rhythm and that kind of thing, but...
Yeah, and the levels as well were generated in real time,
yeah,
which was actually quite
based on what you do. Yeah, if that's your type of game, it probably is worth checking out, but I got nothing from that trailer.
I must admit, it wasn't doing very much for me, Lucy, though. Next up was a game called Faria by Abracam SA. This game looked staggeringly similar to Hearthstone. Obviously, it was a card game. Lewis was just telling me that the game has been out since 2016, apparently.
Yeah, it seems to have been out on iOS and Windows and other things for a wee while, so...
Yes, it seems as though it is very much like Hearthstone, although it has an element where you can use the battlefield itself to your advantage and you're building the battlefield as you go. It had a story campaign, which I always think is quite interesting for games like these, and it's coming out in March 2020. If you're into Hearthstone, maybe check it out.
And then next was Eldest Souls, this coming from Fallen Flag Studio and United Label. This was kind of like a boss rush battler. I thought the art style was really nice. It kind of had this...
Agree, yeah. Definitely.
Yeah, it's quite hard to explain, but just something that felt very classic kind of Dungeons & Dragons-y.
It was very pixely.
Yeah. It's something that I think if you watch it, you'll recognise it, even if you've never played the game that looks like it, if you know what I mean.
It's like really, really good pixel art.
Yeah, exactly that. So that is also coming in the summer of 2020, coming soon.
After that was Nintendo's classic indie montage list.
Yeah, so these are some other games that they just wanted to highlight. First up was Blair Witch, which is coming to Nintendo Switch in the summer of 2020 as well. This obviously being the game based on, not on the movies exactly, but on the lore around that whole franchise. So, fairly well reviewed when it dropped a few months back, but not for everyone, certainly. Then next up was Ghost of a Tale, which just seemed to feature big rats as in a 3D action game.
It seemed to be a game largely about massive rats. There was nothing else to give or take from the trailer.
Not at all, no. But that's coming spring 2020 if big rats are your thing. Then next after that was Sky from that game company, which...
Speaking of Journey.
Exactly, yeah. So this is the same company that made Journey. This has been out on mobile at least for...
about a year.
Yeah, it's a game that both of us have downloaded and still never got around to playing. So
one of those.
It's not going to be something that I imagine either of us pick up on the Switch, but definitely one to check out if you loved Journey, and that's coming in the summer. Then there was Skyracket from Double Dash, which is dropping today, which looks like another 2D side-scrolling kind of shooting game like Shishimi, which we were talking about earlier. Next up was Superliminal, which is coming in the summer 2020.
Yeah, this is a really creative game that kind of plays with perspective. It did come out earlier. No, sorry, it would have been the end of last year. No, it didn't review so hot, but I think that the concept of the game is really, really interesting. Really interesting.
It's one of those ones that a lot of people were talking about, and then it kind of flopped a little bit on release. But yeah, still looks pretty cool. Nice that it's coming to Switch in the summer. Then there was Wingspan, which is coming in the spring of 2020, which looked like some sort of bizarre birdwatching simulator game.
Yes, it did.
Hard to know much about it based on what they showed, but
difficult to comment on a birdwatching game. Yes.
And then there was Dicey Dungeons, also coming this year, which just also looked like a bit of a dice game based battler. Not much to say about that whatsoever. Next was Bounty Battle, which was a sort of daft looking 2D brawler.
I thought it looked good, man. I thought it looked cool.
It looked alright, yeah.
I think that more can be done with the brawler genre than Super Smash Bros. I mean, Super Smash Bros. Is going to be Super Smash Bros. But I don't know. I think that there's more to be had there, you know?
I hope
I
so.
admire
for their
others
sake.
trying.
Yeah.
I admire others trying.
It's just always going to pale in significance, particularly on the Switch, against the daddy of them all.
Don't try and compete then. Do something different. Do something cool and unique and
That's
interesting.
Key to it, absolutely. And the final game in the montage, and one of the best games that they showed off, one of the most interesting ones for us, at least from the whole showcase, I thought, was Moving Out, which is...
Yeah, from the Overcooked folk.
Yeah, exactly. It's the same publishers as Overcooked. It's a very, very similar game to Overcooked, so if you've ever played that, you know exactly what we're talking about. It is all about coordination. It's all about screaming at your pals.
Brilliant couch co-op again.
Incredible.
Brilliant couch co-op again. One of the best couch co-ops I've played in a long, long time.
Absolutely.
Love playing that with you, man.
Yeah, and so Moving Out just looks like more of the same good fun, and that's coming on April 28th. So if this lockdown's still going on, it's the perfect game to give you and your friends something to do.
And finally, their one more thing, Lewis, was Exit the Gungeon. Very interesting because this game has been out on Apple Arcade for a long while now.
Yeah.
So when did Apple Arcade launch? Because it was one of the,
I think
it was one of the original games on it, I believe. You were saying as well that it's been downloaded on your phone for a while. It's been downloaded on my phone for a while. Neither of us have played it. This is the sequel to Devolver Digital's Enter the Gungeon, which was massively successful and looked really, really good fun. It was a sort of top-down bullet hell roguelike, was that how we were describing it? But whereas this one is two-dimensional and a bullet hell that way, which is interesting, which I think probably plays better on the phone, is what they were trying to do with that.
Yeah, so they describe it as a dungeon climber rather than a dungeon crawler. So it's all about verticality and it's about moving up and down in the space. It certainly has.
I do love Devolver Digital. You know that,
yeah,
I really do.
I mean, that's the thing. It does look like a really brilliant game. It's one, as you said, that certainly that I've had downloaded for a long time, just haven't got around to yet. It was right at the beginning of Apple Arcade, which was back in September, so it was around then that it dropped. And for the Nintendo to kind of end on this, I'm not sure that's...
It was, to be honest with you, I'm going to be straight with you guys just now. It wasn't the hottest indies world, I've got to say. I really wanted to hear something about Hollow Knight Silksong, and I really, really did. But alas, this is what we've got. But nonetheless, there's been a lot of stuff in there that I think looks interesting.
Definitely, yeah.
That is always something to keep an eye on. And I think the thing to remember about indies is no matter how good they look or how bad they look, when they actually release and people get to play them, it can be a completely different response than what you're expecting. And I think indie games are quite susceptible to that, as opposed to like AAAs where you kind of know what you're getting going in, you know. And with that, Lewis, I'd like to remind everyone that they can find Players2 on all the social media. That is Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, the lot. You can also find our written content over at players2.com. That's PLAYERSTOO.com. And if you could take 5 seconds to give us 5 stars wherever you get your podcasts, whether that's Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Stitcher, Podchaser, wherever, if you could give us 5 stars, it helps us out so much. It does a huge amount for the exposure of the show. And while you're there, if you could give us a review as well, that really, really helps us out. And let us know and we'll give you a shout out on social media. I'd like to remind everyone that our play along game for this month is Her Story. I have not yet started playing it, but now that I'm basically quarantined, I've got loads of time. So that's good to know. And the month after this will also be Telling Lies, which is both Sam Barlow games, and we're going to do both of his games back to back because they both follow the same interesting ideas, and I think it'd be good to talk about them back to back. Also, it means that if you choose to play along this month and next month, you can probably get a good deal on both of those games together. I think you were saying they were about 20 quid together.
Exactly, yeah, on Steam, yeah. That was a couple of weeks ago now, but I assume that'll be broadly the same deal at the moment, yeah.
Well, join us for that. I'm very much looking forward to playing both those games. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we will see you next week.
Stay safe.